Welcome back. So we have Matthew and Stephen. We have three things to talk about. First, you want to tell us, Matt, how did you, apparently you have a story to tell, something to do with the first token summit. Apparently you met Steve and some idea came about. So tell us what happened a year ago at the token summit in New York.
Yeah, I'm sure by now there's enough blockchain crypto conferences where you're deciding, do you go, do you show up, what's the utility of hanging out at these things, and a great kind of backstory on Steve and I. Steve and I have known each other for many, many years. When he was a partner at Pantera, a lot of the deals that Pantera did that were, in my opinion, some of the most interesting deals that they invested in were because of Steve. So we've known each other as friends for a long, long time. And a year ago on Token Summit 1 here in New York, Steve and I were sitting next to each other. And then he kind of leaned over and he said, you know, I'm thinking about this project. And he's like, I'm not only thinking about it, I can't stop thinking about it. And then throughout the progression of the day, we were kept comparing notes and kept talking about it. And by your reception that evening, we were like sketching stuff out on a napkin. And that led to further discussions and building out a work plan, a token model, a pitch deck. And I'll let Steve describe kind of really what happened there. But it was just really indicative of you know, relationships matter, and you just don't know where you find certain kind of intersections and how things come together. So that was, I thought, really a cool start to Steve's kind of seed of Orchid.
So where is it now, a year after? What happened, Steve? How have you taken this idea and then you've developed it, and where are we now?
Well, as Matt was saying, Matt was very instrumental in getting us started, and also really explaining to me, even though I'd been in the crypto space since 2013, exactly how fast the token space was moving. So I guess from this point on till mid towards the end of July, we then raised our first round, which included bringing in the first major Silicon Valley venture capitalists into a token deal. We did not do an equity deal, we did a token deal only. And since that point, obviously from the beginning of Token Summit till that point, we also brought an incredible team, which includes a co-founder who Matt is also working with, Gustav Simonson from Ethereum and Dfinity, Jay Freeman, who created and managed the Cydia framework, which was the original app store for the iPhone, and essentially more of a feature store, essentially be able to put applications and features onto your iPhone that were differentiated from what Apple was supporting and allow people to add in all the features that we now kind of take for granted in the Apple iPhone infrastructure. Brian Fox, who was the first employee of the Free Software Foundation, and also wrote Bash and Emacs, and incredible developer. And since then, we've been building out our team. We've been building out the technology. We published a white paper last year in October and actually launched the project. And we just completed the first part of a raise, which is public information, has been published in the news. We are now scaling the company and planning to launch test network this summer, and then the main network in October of this year.
And what got me when we were sitting next to each other in Token Summit a year ago, what got me was one of the things that originally kind of resonated with me when I first heard of Bitcoin, and when Steve described it, I was it was basically accessing the internet in a secure, private way, which is you know, kind of up there with life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. You know, it's like having, you know, being able to manage your own money, your own data, and in this case, access. That was something I've not heard of a project like that, and so that really resonated with me. And then obviously now a year later, that narrative is elevated.
But in a nutshell, Steve, can you tell us, what does Orchid do? What is this? What is the idea? What is the mission? And what is it doing, really, just as a background?
Yeah, sure. So there's been an evolution. The very first idea, which we're still very true to, is the idea that currently access to information around the world is censored, and in addition, citizens of this planet are heavily surveilled. So we would like to see a world in which people have a choice to either be in a world where they want to be surveilled and censored or not. And Orchid's going to give you that choice. In addition, there's been an evolution of this idea. We now tend to frame everything we do in terms of attack vector resistance. So attack vectors, one attack vector is censorship, another is surveillance, and there are other ones. So one of our concerns over many blockchain projects is, if blockchain is going to be such a big idea, then how come we are building some of these things in quite an insecure way? So we are addressing that broader idea. And in addition to not only providing the ability to do that with bandwidth, we're now doing that same thing with storage and compute, and we will be offering a platform for developers to build applications that allow them to take advantage of those features in the future.
So in terms of applications, is the publishing of information one of the first such applications?
Well, certainly publishing, but also access. There are about 400 million internet users in China, which is similar to the population of this country, and they are currently unable to access the kind of information that we take for granted. And William Gibson uses this phrase, the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And people tend to see that in a positive way, like everything's gonna be great, but there's another version of this, which is fly to China and then see how you feel.
So do you think that Orchid will go around the Chinese firewall and allow the Chinese population to express themselves? Is that one of the potential outcomes?
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
without
our hope.
Without fear of repercussions or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, there are many parts of the world where this is an issue, not just China. And we also recognize that, there are other reasons why people might want to think of this kind of technology beyond just state control. We've recently seen issues in some of the social networks that people are concerned now with the way they're sharing their information. So I'm very encouraging all the projects that are looking at this area, and we're also looking at how to offer projects like that and other major applications the ability to think of different ways to use bandwidth, compute, and storage in a decentralized way that is attack vector resistant.
Great. I want to talk about two more topics. Matthew, you're involved with the Metronome project and Bloq, obviously. And yesterday or the day before, you announced the launch date now for this new, can you talk about that, the new token? And
yeah, absolutely. So we did announce our formal launch date of Metronome. The information can be found on metronome.io, but Metronome is a new novel cryptocurrency that's launching on June 18th. That's the start of the descending price auction. And so what is Metronome? It's a new money layer. And it's got some technical feats to it. First of all, it's autonomous, which means once it's built and launched, no author, nobody at Bloq or anybody else involved can change it. And I think going forward, autonomous networks will be some of the most powerful and valuable layers of this new internet. And so in building an autonomous network, obviously the testing and auditing and the precision involved in launching something like that is no small feat, hence the time it took to build it. Secondly, in terms of another feature of Metronome is that it's born on Ethereum, but it also has cross-chain portability as a feature. So think about any other EVM you could put it to, EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine. So think Ethereum, Ethereum Classic, Quantum. When Rootstock and Bitcoin have a baby, then that will be another lily pad that you could port it to. And so think of the underlying blockchain as your railroad and your Metronome or your token as a boxcar that you could move from rail to rail. And so there's this, there are existential risks in some of the rails, whether it's a mining risk, a community risk, a developer risk in any particular rail that you're ascribed to. But if you could abstract that and have like a money app, like a money application that floats on any blockchain that you elect for it to float on, that's a new concept in crypto. That's self-governance, meaning you decide where your crypto resides. And that's a whole new kind of a proximity that you have to your crypto. And so our white paper is not a white paper, it's an owner's manual. You self-govern where this resides. And so from the autonomous nature to the portability, those are two, I think, really fundamental features, especially when you want to build a new novel cryptocurrency, and think about how you build something with a white sheet of paper today. The other piece that's really novel is in the way we're going to market with Metronome is the sale is a descending price auction. So there was no pre-ICO, there was no special bonus given to anybody. In doing it right, fairness was a core principle in launching it. So nobody got an advantage leading up to this. Everybody, whether it's Andreessen Horowitz or a soccer mom in Brazil, starts on June 18th to participate in this auction. Part one. Part two, again, something we're really proud of is what is the use of proceeds in the sale of Metronome? Does it go to some obscure foundation in Switzerland? Does it go to Bloq? Does it, none of the above. It goes into code. So the sale of Metronome tokens, the Ethereum goes into a smart contract, and that smart contract, again, is autonomous and only does one thing. It, on a daily basis, pushes out 25 basis points into the Metronome community for liquidity and price support. So it's an all kind of encompassing ecosystem that stays intact and provides that liquidity and price support.
What will it be used for? What will be the usage cases for Metronome that you're predicting?
Yeah, so I mean, no, stretch of the imagination. It's a cryptocurrency, so it's a store of value. It's payments, and then ultimately, when you have an autonomous money layer, you think about machine-to-machine payments. So not payment processing, but payment programming. So if you're running an application and you need to pay something on a long arc of time, making sure that crypto is durable for that 10 or 15-year programmability, that is cross-chain, that has that autonomous nature, really provides that functionality as better than anything available today. But that's how I look at what is a healthy totem pole or pizza stack of a healthy cryptocurrency: store value, payments, and then ultimately machine to machine.
Okay, let's talk about the token alliance for a minute, and then we'll come back with a question to Steve about Orchid and where it's going. So I know you're involved with the token alliance out of Washington, and do you have a pre-announcement to make? You were gracious enough to show me a preview copy, and I can tell it was probably the most substantial report that I've seen coming out explaining best practices for tokens. And when is that report coming out? Because I think it's going to be a substantial one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's everybody in this room cares very deeply about this space and making sure that this font of innovation and this Cambrian explosion that we're all a part of stays intact for all the right reasons. And if you look back at any kind of technological shift, whether it's railroads or telephony or internet, in this case, crypto and blockchain, you have people that leverage this industry and some of the ICO financings and everything else in the wrong way. And so as an industry, you want to set up best practices, elevate our game, and not necessarily in a self-regulatory organization, an SRO, but just basically a platform to put out best practices, frameworks, everything as mundane as disclosures or lockups. One thing for Metronome, the founder's stake in that is locked up, but it's not like locked up in as a social contract. It's locked up in code called a token locker that we built, and it vests out over a 3-year period. And so some of these things, which sound kind of trivial, the more as a community that we could set up best practices, the better. The Token Alliance is a working group of the Chamber of Digital Commerce, where I proudly serve as chairman. And the last thing I actually want to do is spend time with regulators and 3-letter agencies. I want to build, invest, innovate. But again, caring deeply about this space, we have to spend time with them because they could compress this air hose that will impact our business. And so the Token Alliance is putting out a white paper in the next several weeks. William got to see a draft of that 70-page document setting out best practices. 20 law firms from around the world, 300 technology companies from around the world, crypto, blockchain companies, have their fingerprints on this. But it's an open source document. It'll be put on GitHub for people to contribute and make this a living document that we could all be proud of.
Great. We look forward to seeing that. In closing, Steve, where is Orchid going? What can we expect in the next 6 months or till the end of the year?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, we'll be launching the main network in October, and we will be doing a test network this summer. We'll also be working significantly with business partners, developers, not just kind of applications built out of the blockchain space and token space, but also actual applications that people use today, whether it's for access or communication.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.